Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Nice to see you here on such a beautiful evening. I thought I'd put the shirt on. You never know when it's going to be available for the rest of the summer, do you? While the sun's out, let's make the most of it. You know, that's my excuse anyway. There's worse where this came from, trust me. So yeah, it's great to see you all. Obviously, shortly we'll be hearing from Guy, one of our own, and always fascinating when we get a member talking to us. So looking forward to that. First up, parish notices, if I can remember them all. So I'm going to look at Sue and Linda to give me prompts here. First up is the walk on the 20th of July. I know that many of you have got your names down already. Sue has a list on the table here, so if you do want to go along, please put your details on that list. So that's on the 20th of July. Our next meeting next month is Becky Randall, who's a chemist, and she's going to be talking on a topic of chemistry. We're actually still waiting for her to give us the topic, but this may be because Becky's research is really cutting-edge research. And you might remember she came last year talking about smart windows. So that's probably what's going on there. And I know that she's got a couple of research strands at the moment, so I think she's probably decided on which one to do. But that's going to be Thursday, Sue, what day is that? Is that I'll put Sue on the spot now.
Yes, the 22nd.
22nd. So Thursday the 22nd. So we're back to the third Thursday for next month. So that's Thursday the 22nd of June. The other thing as well that we were discussing at our meeting recently is your thoughts on reintroducing refreshments. Because you know those of you who are members of the Society for some time, and welcome to visitors by the way, and to new members, it's great to see you here. If you are a visitor, you will be strong-armed to become a member. Just to warn you in advance. But what we used to do pre-COVID, which feels such a long time ago now, doesn't it? But pre-COVID, we used to have refreshments after the speaker for about 15 minutes, and then we'd have questions after that. So one of the things that we've discussed is bringing back refreshments, because obviously that was a nice social aspect of the society. So it would be useful just to see what you think about refreshments. It probably involves as well going into the back room again, so the meetings will be in the back room because that's where the kitchen is, and it just makes things easier for those who prepare the drinks, and it's easier for us walking around as well with the drinks. Just something that we wanted to get a feel for about how you feel about refreshments coming back. Can you just give me a show of hands? Stick your hands up if you think refreshments back. Oh, it's a bit close, isn't it? It's a bit close. Well, I tell you what we may do, because it seemed a bit split down the middle. So what we may do is bring it back just to try and see what you think. Okay, and then feed it back to us. If you think the evening's going on too long, that's what we need to know. Okay, so just give us a little bit of feedback. So perhaps if we look towards, what do we think? Do we think the new season for that? Was that the idea? I can't remember what we said. So sort of September. Try it for the September meeting and just see what we think. Yeah. But I think we split 50-50, so I think what we've got to do is kind of give it a go and just see what everybody. You can go to the pub, absolutely. Yeah. Or just drag a tap in here and we can all just have a great time. So well, I'll tell you what, because it was 50-50, let's just try it in September and see what happens. All right. Yes, Sue.
People who perhaps are new to us realise the question time won't be until after.
Yes, after the refreshments.
You know,
yeah.
If you've got a question, you
Yeah.
you want to go.
It's after that, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, well, we can play around with the format. You know, it's your society, not ours, so we can play around with the format. Okay, I think that was it, wasn't it? So, Linda, Alan, yeah, everything, right, super. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Guy Morse-Brown. Many of you will know Guy. You've been resident in the village for many years.
50 years.
50 years, wow, okay. So many of you will know Guy, you'll know the family as well. So this is a great opportunity to catch up with your life and what on earth you've been doing. So everybody, Guy Morse-Brown.
A warm welcome, I say warm, it is warm, isn't it? A warm welcome to everybody. It's lovely to be here and to be able to share with you some of the wonderful things that have happened over the last 50 years or so. First of all, I want to take you back to 1949. Now, if you knew Tenby at all, it's the town where I grew up, you know that there's a beautiful beach. And if you happen to have been standing on that beach in the summer in 1949, you might have seen a small boy running up and down with a strange contraption strapped to his back and a big wooden propeller on the top and a handle. And he was turning this handle as hard as he could. He was trying to fly. Needless to say, it didn't work. That was one of my early inventions, which was a failure. But you learn by your failures, don't you? So let me take you back to the beginning. I was born in 1939. That makes me 84, in Carmarthen, South Wales. I moved to Tenby with my mother to live with her parents in a house that they bought. And my father didn't accompany us because this was just before the war and he went off and joined the army. Unfortunately, he didn't come back. No, he didn't get killed, but my parents were divorced shortly after the war, so I grew up without a father. But I grew up with a very good mum, which I'm really, really grateful for. Her attitude was one of encouragement and letting me do virtually whatever I wanted, as long as I assured her that it was safe. And she would say, "Is it safe, Guy?" "Yes." "Okay, off you go." Hardly appropriate in these days. Anyway, one of the things that she had done was to read in the Reader's Digest a short article called "A Seat for a Small Boy." Now this was about encouraging young people to experience hands-on craftsmen while they were at work and sit some seat and just see what was going on. Accordingly, she arranged for me, or for both of us in fact, to go out to New Hedges, which is about 2 miles outside Tenby, where the local blacksmith lived. And we went out there one afternoon. We had to walk because we didn't have a car, we had no bikes, so a short 2 mile walk out to the forge where Mr. Mason, the blacksmith, lived. And he worked with wrought iron, heating up and hammering, and he made a tulip, would you believe? And it was beautiful. And I was really captivated by this, and I thought, how does he manage to do that? But he did. And obviously that was a great temptation for me because he was somebody who could make parts for my inventions. I pestered him. I began to wonder if he wished he'd never met me, but he was very helpful and very accommodating. So for 2 and 6pence he would make a thing for my go-kart or whatever, and it was really good. Now the other person who was perhaps a formative person in my life was a chap called Mr. Barnes. Now Mr. Barnes ran the Mend It service. Just after the war, as I'm sure you all remember or realise, new things were in short supply and you had to make do and mend. So he provided the Mend It service, and people would take things there and get them mended. And again, I pestered him to have little shafts turned on his lathe or whatever, and he was extremely helpful. But perhaps the most influential person in my young days was Eric Copland. Now, Eric Copland he had a boat in the harbour. It was through the boat that I met him, and he became a very close friend of my mother and myself over the years. And in fact, one could say that he became like a pseudo father, encouraging me towards engineering, which is what he was. In fact, he worked for the electricity board and was responsible for surveying for the rural electrification of North Wales. Now one day he decided that it might be nice if I went with him, and we went to a little village called Ysbyty Ystwyth. Now if you know your Welsh, which I don't, but if you know your Welsh, it's the hospital on the river Ystwyth. hence Aberystwyth, the mouth of the Ystwyth, but there we are, that's on the side. When we got there, we were taken up by a gentleman who lived there to a tin shed, corrugated iron shed up on the hill. And you could hear that there was something happening inside this shed. So we went inside, and there was a little water turbine being driven by water coming down a pipe from a reservoir at the top of the hill. And this was driving a small generator. And the gentleman who was explaining to us how it worked said, there's only one problem, he said. He said, if one of the farmers switches on a big machine, all the lights in the houses go dim. So I think they were very pleased that Mr. Copland was going to arrange for mains electricity to be supplied to the village. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with Kenneth Grahame and Wind in the Willows. Lovely book. It was a great favourite of mine when I was a child. And you will remember the conversation between Ratty and Mole, when Ratty says, my dear friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. So I took a cue from that, and that's me in my boat.
Wow, did you make that?
I made that. That was the first of boats that I made. I think I was about 10 at the time. I made it up from some bits of wood that we had handy, and cut down a small tree to make the mast, begged a bedspread from Mum, and sailed happily round the harbour in Tenby in the little boat.
Wow.
You can see now why my mum asked if things were safe. Living by the sea, obviously one gets to be involved in all kinds of boats. I was taught how to sail boats in a sailing dinghy by Mr. Copland, Eric Copland, and we went in for races in the evenings, and we won a few too, which was nice. But it was really enjoyable. I had a great big canoe, a two-seat canoe. We used to go exploring along the coastline towards Manorbier and Amroth in this canoe. And I actually converted it to sail, which was good fun. A bit dangerous, but good fun. One of the other things that I was very keen on was underwater swimming. Again, because one lives by the sea, you do that sort of thing. But I would have liked to have had an aqualung. Well, that was completely outside my financial ability. I could no more buy an aqualung and fly to the moon. So I decided that I would make one. Okay. And it so happened that I had some American magazines. I think they were called Practical Mechanics. I think there's a British magazine called that, but this was an American one. And in the magazine it explained how you could make a pump and the necessary valves and equipment to enable you to go under the surface. So I made this thing and cajoled my friend to man the pump, which he did very well, and I disappeared under the surface in Tenby Harbour. One evening I came up from down below to be greeted by a lady who was obviously from somewhere like Llanelli or somewhere around South Wales, and she looked at me. Oh, I ought to explain. Part of the equipment was a hot water bottle strapped to my back. Now what do you want that for, you might think? Well, I'll tell you. In order for the air to coming down the pipe from my friend's pump not to be wasted, when I breathed out, it went into the bottle, which expanded, and then when I breathed in, I got air from the pipe plus the air from the bottle. So you were reducing the effort that my friend needed by 50%, and it worked very well. But this lady looked at this bottle as I came up and she said, "Oh, cold down there, is it?" Some people. The next thing that happened, which was probably a major turning point in my life, because the next time I came up from the depths, I was greeted by a gentleman standing on the quayside beside me, and he looked at what I'd made, and he said, "Pardon me, but did you make that?" And I said, "Oh, yes, sir." He said, "Would you like an engineering apprenticeship with my company?" And I said, "Well, pardon me, sir, but who are you?" He said, "I'm Jack Thompson of the John Thompson Engineering Company in Wolverhampton." "Oh, right, well, I'll think about that, thank you." And so what he said was that, "Why don't you come up to the works for 2 weeks, have a look, see if you like what we're doing, and then you can make a decision as to whether you want to become an apprentice." Well, I did go. I went for a fortnight, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And I then signed up for a 5-year apprenticeship, which involved a sandwich course at the Polytechnic, which is now Wolverhampton University, in mechanical engineering, and the sandwich course meant that you spent 6 months in the works and 6 months at the college for 5 years. It was a pretty intensive course. In fact, I have to say, listening to one of my sons who did an engineering course at university, it was a lot harder than the current engineering courses. The lectures 8 hours a day, every day for the week, and you had to learn the stuff and do well in the exams. Anyway, at the end of this period, I qualified as a mechanical engineer and went to work for, yes, John Thompson's. And I was involved with the design of fuel handling equipment for nuclear power stations. Those are the machines that put the fuel elements into the reactor, and then when they're spent, take them out again. I spent a year, in fact, on site at Berkeley Nuclear Power Station as an assistant test engineer when it was being commissioned, which was quite an eye-opener as to how these things work. However, I really wanted to change because my ultimate aim was to be self-employed. And if I was going to be self-employed, then there's no way that my customers would want a nuclear reactor in the back garden. So I had to think of something else. So what I did, in fact, was to resign myself from John Thompson's and went to work for Pell. Maybe somebody knows Pell. It's a tubular steel furniture company, part of Tube Investments, and it's situated in Oldbury, over the way. So I worked for them for 2 years and learned a lot about tubular steel furniture manufacture and design. Again, it was an enjoyable time meeting new people, people who understood furniture. And the next thing that happened was that a school friend of mine had become the art master at Malvern College. And he knew that I liked to make things, so he asked me if I could make him 20 desks for his art department with flip-up tops. So I said, well, yes, I can do that, and decided to ask Pell to make the tubular steel frames, because at that point I didn't have welding equipment to do that kind of work, but I could do the woodwork on the top. So they made these frames, I did the woodwork, put them all together and shipped them down to Malvern. The next thing that happened was that I was called into the company director's office, and they said, Mr. Morse-Brown, I hear you're working in competition with us. I said, beg your pardon? He said, you've just taken an order for tubular steel furniture. Yes. He said, you should have given that order to us. Well, I did. I gave you the order for the frames. No, Mr. Morse-Brown, you should have given us the whole order. We could have done that quite easily. Oh, and how much commission would I have got? Oh, you wouldn't get any commission, you're an employee. And what happens if I refuse? You can go. I was out at the end of the week. Big change. So you might begin to wonder, what did I do as I ventured into the realms of self-employment, not having any experience of running a business. The business side was a bit of a mystery. I didn't really manage the money very well to start, but we got there. Anyway, first of all, I want to introduce you to a young man called Stephen. Now, Stephen has become a lifelong friend of mine. In fact, our families grew up together with his 3 girls and my children. And he became a designer craftsman, the same as I did. And we have worked together on and off now for the last 40 years. But the initial contact with him was through a friend of mine who was the physics master at Wolverhampton Grammar. And he mentioned to me that he got this student, Stephen, who didn't particularly like academic work and liked woodwork. Could he come and see me? So he did. Well, the rest is history. He came and we worked together on all sorts of projects. And the reason I tell you all that is because the next little event that happened was that Stephen and I were building a rose arbour in a client's garden. I think it was out at Claverley Way, I can't remember exactly now. But we'd had all the pressure-treated timber delivered, and we had to cut the joints and put it all together. Now, as you probably know, if you cut a joint in a pressure-treated timber, you've got to apply more preservative so that the whole thing remains protected. And we had a pot of this preservative, a little glass jam jar with a brush in it, just for splodging it on the joints. And beside us was a big koi carp pond, and I mean big. These fish were that. And unthinkingly, I put this jar down on the edge of the pond. There was a sudden puff of wind, and the thing fell into the pond. And you can imagine what it felt like. We thought, this is going to kill the fish. And there was this oily film spreading out over the surface of the water. So Stephen, who called me AG, which is my initials, he said, AG, quick, get the hose, get the hose. Get the hose, I don't know how you get it. So I got the hose, plugged it in, switched it on, said, now stick it in the pond. Stuck it in the pond, and slowly the level rose up until it became level with the concrete edge of the pond, and all the coloured film began to flow over the edge into the flower bed. I don't know what it did with the flowers, but it certainly saved the lives of all these expensive fish, which we were really relieved by. So that was the little story of the koi carp and introduction to Stephen. Now, I was married to Anne in 1967. She and I went to the same school in Tenby, the grammar school. She went in as I was coming out, because there was that age span between us. And at the time, I was living at Mill Lane Farmhouse. Just let me check that that's it. That isn't the next one. Where's Stephen? Can you help on this one, please? It should be the old farmhouse. That's it. No, not that. There, that's it. You got it. Yeah. We're off. Sorry about that glitch. So I was living there. Now, if you know Wombourne, you may recognise it, but that was 55 years ago. It's the old farmhouse in Mill Lane, just below the Child Welfare Clinic. And as you see, it's in pretty poor shape. The brickwork is very damp all up this wall. The windows leak. In fact, I went home to Tenby one weekend, and when I came back, there was a snowdrift across my bed. Blown in through that window, the far one. Anyway, I said to Anne, well, we need to decide where we're going to live. We were engaged at the time, and she said straight away, I'm never going to live in that place, meaning this place. So, okay, well, we'll have to look for somewhere else. Well, we talked to the agent from whom I was renting this one, which is the Shaw Hellier estate at the Woodhouse, and he said, well, it so happens that we've got a house that might be suitable for you. It's just been renovated for one of our employees, but he doesn't want it. So if you'd like to have a look. And he took us up to see the top lodge at the Foxhills, just up on the other side of the dual carriageway. And we rented it, and our two oldest boys were born up there. The next thing that happened was that we decided that with a growing family, because we didn't want to stop at 2, with a growing family, and also the fact that we were involved with the youth club youth group at St Benedict's, and the young people would come to us for coffee every evenings, and it began to get a bit crowded. So we thought, where can we go? Where can we get a bigger place? And then we heard that the farmhouse was still empty after I'd left it a year or so before. So I approached the agent and I said, do you think we could rent it again? And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll make a proposition for you. He said, we'll go and look at it, you can look round. And he said, if you're prepared to do the work of restoration or renovation to make it habitable, we'll pay for the materials. And I thought, oh, that's a good deal, but hang on, how much is the rent? And he said, well, would £3 a week be suitable? Would it? So even though wages in those days were a lot less than they are now, it was still a very good deal. So we went to work, and I started doing it, and you can see what sort of major job it was. In fact, we'd completely taken down the end bit that you saw, where all the damp brickwork was, and rebuilt the wall internally, which was only half a brick thick, and rebuilt it right up there, as you can just see the new part at the top. And then what we did next was to prop up the roof and take the whole of the front wall out halfway down, leaving a great big space because we wanted to reposition the windows and the doors. They were in the wrong place. Now, as you can see, I don't know if I can make this, wait a minute. Yeah. Oh yeah. There you are. Can you see that pipe there?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, careful. Get yourself back. To see what you've done.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go. Right, okay.
That's it, you got it.
Yeah, okay, and you want to point at that?
Yeah,
Okay.
got it. You warned me about that and I didn't pick you up on it, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. My apologies.
Duty done, I've done it.
Okay, well, one of the lovely things that happened during that time was obviously I needed to be involved with the local authority. And the building inspector was a gentleman called Wal Baker. He was a lovely older man, a black country man, and when he saw that pipe, he said, new building regulations. If you ain't got no wall to put your downpipe on, run it out to the nearest lamppost and tie it on the string. So that's what we did. And there was another funny happening inside the house actually, because we managed to get hold of a lot of old church pews, and I used the backs and dismantled them and then reassembled them as panelling for the walls in one of the big rooms in the farmhouse. And one day Wal Baker came along and he looked at these and he said, "Golly, have you fireproofed them panels, mate?" And I said, "No, Wal." He said, "Kid, I ain't seen them, I'm going." That's what I like about a building inspector. It wouldn't happen today. So, we had 4 more boys while we were at Mill Lane Farmhouse, and we thought it would be rather nice to have a girl, like you do, and wondered how we might do it. Now, obviously, there was no internet, there was no Google, so we couldn't inquire thereby to find out how to have girls. So what did we do? Well, we did what all the children did and what I did. Go to the library. We got a book, How to Have Girls. Bingo. Grace was the answer, our daughter. So our family was complete, 6 boys and 1 girl. And we, in fact, had finished the farmhouse after a period of working on it, of 13 years. Now, let's see if it'll show the next one. Yes, there we are. That's as it is now, finished after the work was done.
Wow.
I did most of the work myself with a young man who I took on for a couple of years to help me with labouring, and he was excellent. And we did get a contractor in to do the brickwork, just the brickwork for the end bit, because although I was reasonably good at bricklaying by that time, it was we wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. So there we are. That's where I live now, and that's our farmhouse. Now, just add that my workshop, in fact, is in the cellar below the left-hand bottom window and that carport. There's a part of it in the carport and part of it underground in the cellar, which is very handy.
You can put the downpipe attached to the lamppost anymore.
No. I thought about keeping it, but somebody might have complained. Now, obviously, being a father, I had to put a different hat on this time, and this was the dad hat. And because I had a workshop on site, I could make things for the family as were needed. And one day, the family were making damson jam. Now, if you know about damson jam making, you've got to get the pips out, otherwise you're going to get broken teeth with people. So I thought to myself, right, there's got to be a way of doing this other than spooning them out like the kids were doing for my wife. So I popped down to the workshop, got a piece of pipe and a plunger and made this thing, took it up and said, there you are, pour the hot jam into the pipe, put the plunger in and push. And out comes jam with no pips in it.
No.
Yes. And we called that the damson squisher, which we made many pounds of damson jam over the years.
Still make it?
Sorry?
Have you got any left?
What?
Yeah.
Jam, damson jam.
No. What's the thing?
Oh no, I gave it to somebody.
Oh, drive me mad.
I'll show you how to make one. Another funny event that happened when I was in the workshop, my son number 5, who is Nat, sorry, number 3, I get him muddled up, don't I? Son number 3, Nat, was in the workshop with me, and I explained to him that what I was doing was very tricky. It was only a short job. Would he please not talk to me while I was doing it? Okay, Dad. So there I was, welding away, and a little voice suddenly said, Dad, I won't be a minute, Nat. A little bit longer. Dad, Nat, please be quiet. Dad, you're on fire! The spark had landed on my jersey and was smouldering. So there we were. Well, the experience of building that place gave me a lot of building skills, bricklaying, plastering, woodwork, plumbing, all these things just had to be done by me because there was nobody else to do them. We couldn't afford to pay to have them done, so I had to do them, which was very enjoyable because I love that kind of thing. And it led me to my next hat that I put on as a jobbing builder. And one of the early jobs that we did, again with Stephen, because he was working with me then, was to convert the first floor of a high street property in Bridge North, just above the carpet shop in the middle. And it was a timber frame building, probably of 1700s, really old. And the first floor was just derelict, beautiful wood beams in the ceiling, but it was full of old invoices and bits of paper and junk, and wattled and door partitions and plasterwork. So we cleared all that out and redid it, laid new floors, put up partitions, put in doors and improved the windows and laid carpets and made it a very nice conversion up there. While that work was being done, the client who was going to rent it from the person who I was doing it for came in and said, just could you put in a fax line when you're doing this? And I said, yeah, I'm sure we could. And I turned to the electrician who was working for me and said, Stephen, what's a fax? And he said, oh, come on. He said, it's a new thing, it's wonderful. You can send pictures down the phone line. Really? He said, yeah, I've got one, he said, they're good. Oh, can we put one? Oh, you only want the phone line and then a fax machine? Yeah, okay, so we did it. Right. The client, when we'd finished, the client put us in for the European Year of the Environment Historic Buildings competition, which was a competition to look at works like ours and all sorts of other projects in Shropshire. And we found that in the final analysis we won highly commended for our work, which was very, very pleasing.
Have you got pictures of those, Darren?
Oh, I have, haven't I? Yes, thank you.
Keep your eye.
There we are. That's as it was. And you can see it's pretty ancient. At that point we'd laid the new floor because we'd put chipboard floor down to level it because it was all over the place, higgledy-piggledy oak boards, and we'd strengthened up some of these timbers with steel plates to make sure they were safe. And that's the finished job. Now it's a pity that it's all cluttered up with office stuff. You can't really see the building, but it gives you some idea of what it was like. The next hat that I put on, after being involved in building for about 10 years actually, was making aids for the disabled. This resulted in being asked to make something for a lady in Womben who was severely crippled with rheumatoid arthritis and couldn't get out of a chair easily. So I had to design some equipment for her. I will add that one of the most enjoyable thing about that period was the fact that disabled people were an absolute delight to work for. They were so appreciative of whatever I managed to do, always willing to help in deciding how best to do something to help them. And a far cry from some clients who were very picky and difficult to deal with. But these people, they were lovely. So that was great. I got into quite a long-lasting project actually as a result of that, because we were at St Jude's Church in Wolverhampton, and one Sunday a lady came to me and said, would you come and see my mother? She's got arthritis and she finds it very difficult to get out of her chair. So I said, okay, well, we'll go and meet her, which we did. And there was this poor lady completely stuck in her chair. Every time she wanted to get up, she had to be lifted by two people because she hadn't got the power in her legs to stand up. And it was obviously taking a huge toll on the carers and on herself, on her shoulders. So I said to her, well, I think I can make something for you, but can I take your chair away? Have you got a spare one? And she said, oh yes, you can take the chair. So I took it away and did a bit of welding, bought some springs and made up something that would actually lift the seat up and help her to stand on her feet. I took it back. It looked a bit rough and ready because it was made quickly just to solve the problem. I took it back to them and gave it to her, and she looked a bit dubious as to whether it was, she liked it at all. And I said, well look, don't worry about it. I'll show you how to use it and I'll leave it and you just try it during the week and I'll come back to you next Sunday after church and tell me how you get on. Okay, so that's the way it was left. The following Sunday, we go to church and her daughter comes rushing up to me and said, oh, you must come and see my mum. Oh, what's happened? Come and see, come and see. So the house was just across the street from the church. And we went round. And as we walked into the door of the living room where this lady was sitting, She rose up from her chair, just gracefully like that, down again, up, down, showing off. And she said, "Oh, it's wonderful, it's changed my life, thank you so much." So that was very, very pleasing to be able to have made a great help for somebody like that. Anyway, the next thing to happen to that chair was that I decided to patent the idea, which I did, and then I worked with the Bath Institute of Medical Engineering, working on a new design for it, and the result of that was, let's see if we can make this thing work to show you there you are. That was the new design. It's a funny looking thing at this stage, so don't worry, it changes. Now that's in the upright position, and the little lever at the side is the one you use to release the catch when you're down. So you stand behind it, just like that, and then you sit down, and it sinks down and puts you on, sits you down. In that tray at the bottom are a series of springs, because you can then match the weight of the person exactly, so it doesn't go down with a bump or send them flying across the room, which would be embarrassing. I remember I did a demonstration for a group of elderly ladies at a club one evening with a later version of this. And I said, it's very handy if you want to get rid of the cat. All you've got to do is put the cat on the seat and then stamp on the release lever. And I did that, and nothing happened. I said, no, you can't, the cat isn't heavy enough. You have to match it to the person's weight. So that was all right. And the next one, I think it should show you with it. There you are, that's when it's down. But again, it's a funny looking thing, isn't it? I'm not sure you want one of those in your front room. But a number of people did actually. I saw quite a few of them in nice colours. So this Medical Engineering Institute then contacted a firm in Northern Ireland. No, sorry, it was in Southern Ireland, that's right. There was a reason for mentioning that. They got a grant from the Irish government to pay me to develop this invention into a much more domestic looking piece of equipment, and the result was that.
Wow.
Now that does exactly the same thing. You press the button and it lifts you on your feet. So
Was that material Mericlon?
I don't know. We made a lot of those actually, and it was very successful. Nowadays, of course, most chairs like that are electric. It's the idea of being powered by springs, which is very efficient and accurate. But because you've got to match the weight of the person to the springs, it's a disadvantage. So there we are. I did many aids for disabled. One poor girl in Womburn had spina bifida, and I made a special walking aid for her, which was quite successful. But perhaps one of the most dramatic ones was, I don't know if any of you remember Molly Purcell. She lived in Womburn down on Bratch Lane, and she had multiple sclerosis very badly. And she went around the house in her little wheelchair. She couldn't walk. And she had an electric wheelchair in the garage. And her husband called me one day and said, do you think you could arrange some sort of canopy for her to go from the French window in the lounge into the back door of the garage? If it's raining, she's going to get wet. And I said, yeah, I'm sure I could do that. So I went round and I thought, I said, wait a minute, that's not a very good way of getting from the house to the garage. Surely we could go straight through a wall into the garage. Problem, he said. The garage is 9 inches lower than the floor level of the house. Oh, okay. Well, still no problem. Look, we can cut a hole in the bathroom, put a door in it, and then I can make a machine that she can ride out onto it through the door, onto this machine, and it'll lower her down 9 inches, and she can roll off and get onto her electric chair. Would you like me to do that? Well, that sounds wonderful, he said. So that's what we did. And, wait a minute. There is Molly Purcell. She's come through the new door, which I made in the bathroom, out onto this platform. You can see it's got a surround all around so that she can't roll off it. But then you might think, well, how is she going to get off it when it's down? She'll bump into the surround. No, not so. Down she goes. It's sinking slowly into the floor, controlled by an electric lift, actuated by the push button in her hand. And when it gets to the bottom, it retracts into the floor completely
Wow.
and she can drive off.
Fantastic.
So she was very pleased with that and enjoyed a number of years being able to motivate herself. I'm now going to tell you quite an amazing story actually. You might wonder what's it got to do with what I do. But unless I tell you this, I can't tell you the next one because it's part of it. Well, as I mentioned right at the beginning of my talk, my parents were divorced and I never knew my dad. He'd gone and not to be seen. I had a school friend called Colin. When he was married, he moved to Canada and was very keen on skiing. And one day he was up on the ski slopes and he happened to notice that the lady in front of him had the name Jenny Morse-Brown on her skis. So he said, excuse me, do you know a Guy Morse-Brown? And she turned to her husband and they thought, no, we don't know, do we? No, I don't think so, sorry. And they thought that was the end of it. Well, Colin wrote and told me that, what had happened, because he thought I might know something about it. And I did, because that person was my half-brother and his wife, Si and Jenny. My half-brother is called Si, which rhymes with Guy, but there you are. The next thing that happened was that Si and Jenny were in the habit of going to where my father lived, which happened to be Bermuda. My father was an artist and had retired to live in Bermuda with his wife, Elizabeth. And they would go and enjoy a holiday on Bermuda with him, with his father, my father. And when they got there, Si said to my dad, do you know a Guy Morse-Brown? There was a bit of a silence, and my dad said, no, I don't know a Guy Morse-Brown. And his wife must have looked at him and thought, no? Anyway, nothing was said, and they came away at the end of the holiday. And as soon as they'd gone, Elizabeth said to my dad, you do know, who is it? He said, oh, don't ask, you don't want to know. She thought she was wife number 2. She wasn't, she was wife number 3. The first wife was my mum, and I was the result. So eventually she dragged it out of him that he has got a son called Guy, and it was me. And she said, well, but you never contacted him, you never done anything for him. No. Well, I'm going to write to him. Oh, don't do that, don't do that. I heard all this second hand afterwards. And she wrote, and I got this letter. And it said, my name is Elizabeth Morse-Brown. I'm your father's wife. Would you like to write to your father? I thought, wow, yes I would. Wow, I got a dad. Hallelujah. So we went up to the local photographers with all the children, had a photograph taken of the family, sent it off with a lovely letter saying how nice it was to find my dad. And I explained to him in the letter that I wanted him to understand that there were no hard feelings, no resentment about what had happened in the past. That was entirely forgiven and forgotten, and that he mustn't think that I was in any way angry or upset that he'd left. And I got a letter back very quickly to say that was the best letter he'd ever had in his life. He was so relieved to have worked through that trauma of living with that and never having told his current wife what had happened. The next thing that happened was that Elizabeth writes to us yet again and says, well, you must come and see us, come and meet your dad. And I thought, yeah, Bermuda, on my wages, you're joking. And we thought about it, well, we could possibly scrape up enough money to pay for just Anne and myself to go there for a weekend. And we wrote and told her that. And she wrote back and said, weekend? Don't be ridiculous, you must come for a fortnight. Here's a cheque for £1,000 to pay your airfare. So we set off on British Airways, and we spent a wonderful 2 weeks in Bermuda talking to my dad and getting to know him a bit. And it was lovely, it really was. I'll tell you one funny little story, which is just amusing really, because our second oldest son, John, was very much like mechanical things. And at Heathrow Airport, as we were setting off, he noticed that our baggage was put on a little railway track and disappeared through a curtain. And he said to me, Dad, does that little railway go all the way to Bermuda? I said, no, John, it'll come out the other end. It goes on the plane. Oh. Well, when we got to Bermuda, he said, he saw it coming out of the curtain. He said, look, it's come all the way, it's there. Kids. Anyway, I have now introduced you to the fact that I've got a father who was in contact with me, which is what I had to tell you that, because the next story that I want to talk to you about starts off with a letter from my father saying, could I get him a beret? Now, my father, being an artist, which he was a professional artist, used to wear a beret. But he couldn't buy one in Bermuda. They apparently don't sell them there, not the kind he wanted. So I said, could I get one made? Well, I knew Paula Abbis in the village, and she started her own little millinery shop there some years back. So I went up to see Paula, and I said, Paula, could you make a beret for my dad? Yeah, sure, no problem, she said. And she said, oh, by the way, you do woodwork, don't you? I know what's coming. And I said, yes, what is it you want? She said, can you make me some hat blocks? And I said, yeah, I'll make you some hat blocks. What's a hat block? And she showed me these shapes. Crown blocks for crowns, brim blocks for brims. And she said, I'd like half a dozen if you can make them. But the only trouble with those things is that, as you can imagine, hat blocks and heads are not round. So you can't make these things on a lathe. You have to make them on something that will produce ovals, which is the shape of the hat on the head. So I put my thinking cap on and came up with a gadget to make ovals. I discovered it in the shower one morning actually. Oh yeah, make it like that. And got some bits and pieces, a slow turning motor and a router and all sorts of things. Put it together and it became known as Guy's hat block engine because it made hat blocks, which was lovely. So I made these 6 hat blocks for Paula, and I said to her at the time, can't you buy them? She said, oh no, they're like hen's teeth. Oh, right. Well, where'd you get them? Well, we're looking at charity shops, or, sales. And there is a firm in Luton that makes them, but they've got no catalogue, they're not on the web, and if you want a hat block, you perhaps send them a sketch and they'll make it for you, or you can go up and look on their dusty shelves and choose what you want. And I thought, uh-oh, this looks like an opportunity. So I took some photographs of the blocks that I'd made for Paula, and it so happened that one of Anne's college friends had been to the Ideal Home exhibition and known about our interest in hats and hat blocks, and had taken the names of 25 milliners, which she thought might be useful in promoting things for me, and sent these up. So with the photographs and a letter, I sent a cold mail shot to these 25 milliners. Now my eldest son Eric is in business management, and after a while he rang me up and he said, Dad, did you get any results from your mail shot? I said, no, typical, bit gloom. He said, Dad, you've got to ring him up. And I said, ring him up? What for? He said, come on, Dad, this is the 1990s, not the 1950s. Ring him up. And what do I say? He said, just chat to them, ask them about what they do. Did they like the photographs? Would they like hat blocks, blah, blah. Just chat to them. Oh, all right. Well, I wrote some things down on a bit of paper because I didn't fancy ringing up strange people without any reference points. And I actually got 5 orders over the phone. They decided they were going to order but hadn't got round to it. So I rang back Eric and I said, I got 5 orders, is that good? Good, he said, nearly fell off his chair, that's marvellous. 5 orders out of 25 mail shots. It's just incredible. I said, well, what shall I do now? He said, well, do a better catalogue. Let's see if I can produce this better catalogue. There it is. That was put together by my second eldest son, John, who was a graphic designer. You can see the result of that in that. And there are the different kinds of hat blocks. Now, I just point to you, if I may, that one there is bigger at the top than the bottom. So when you've blocked, as I call it, the fabric over it, and shrunk it all the way around and pinned it, and then you've put like a varnish all over it to stiffen it. It's called stiffener actually. You can't get it off because it's bigger at the top than the bottom. So what do? If you look carefully, you can just see that there's a line there, and a line there, and a line across there. The centre part actually draws out, and the other 4 parts collapse inwards, so you can take them out. And then when you want to use it again, Sorry?
Did you invent that?
I didn't invent it, no, it's a standard way of doing it.
Wow.
But I improved it considerably from the old-fashioned way. Anyway, that's what you call a 5-part block, or some people call them puzzle blocks because of the way they're put together. Again, we've got these big ones are brim blocks. You can quite imagine an ascot hat or a wedding hat with a lady's hat that's the brim. Then you've got perhaps a crown like that. That's a nice downward tilting brim block. Whoa! Help! Technician required.
Out of the way.
1 second.
Bear with me. Right.
That's why you will have had so many children to help with the business.
Yeah.
How are we doing? Let's hold on. Bear with me.
That's it. Lovely. Are we all in order now? Okay.
It'd be better if there was a light for you to see.
Sorry?
It'd be better if there was a light for you to be able to see the buttons.
Yeah. A bit difficult to see it. So there we are. That really, if I can point at that one without switching over. That one is a dolly head. It's not a block. It's a thing for assembling hats on and displaying them. It's got the later versions have got faces carved into them. They look quite nice. So there we are. Those are the blocks.
What's the wood that you use?
Those were made of. They're all made nowadays. Our blocks are made of lime, which is a very nice wood to work with. So the problem then was, how do I promote them? How do I get people to see this catalogue that I produced? So I thought, well, maybe the Yellow Pages will give me more contacts. So I went into Wolverhampton Library and looked, and there on the shelf was a long row of Yellow Pages, many of them. And I sat down and started making notes of the names and addresses and phone numbers of milliners. Pardon me. And I hadn't gone through more than about 6 of them, and I don't know how many there were, probably 20 or 30, but I hadn't done it more than about 6 when the orders were coming in so fast that I had to stop looking for new clients. And I didn't stop making hat blocks then continually for the next 10 years. It just took off, which was wonderful. Now Anne was concerned that I was working hard and putting in too many hours to keep up, and she decided that she would start a millinery school. The idea of that would be that she would earn some money, so I didn't have to earn so much myself. So we converted one of the big rooms in the farmhouse into a schoolroom, and we supplied blocks for it, and we engaged the services of a lovely teacher, a West Indian lady called Beth, and she taught for us for a couple of years. We eventually moved to a little property in the end of High Street, where it was a bit bigger and better to work away from home. And we had clients coming from literally flying in from New York, Norway, wherever, for a week's course, making 6 hats and then going away with bundles of hats, and it was extremely popular. The only snag was that most of them decided that they wanted to take up millinery, and guess what? They wanted hat blocks. So there I was, doubling my orders. Instead of making it easier for me, it made it harder. The other thing that was missing actually in the millinery scene were books on how to make hats. There were very few when we started. There were some City and Guilds course books. I think there were 2 courses available at universities and colleges of art. But basically it was a very background thing that is not very well known. So again, Anne, bless her, thought of, why don't we write some e-books? And so she wrote no less than 30 titles on the basic principles of hat making, different styles. And our son John put them on the website together with this, and these sold really well. She also started a hat magazine called Hat Talk, and that was a monthly publication, again online, it wasn't printed, so there's no printing costs either for the books or for the magazine. And she would edit that with the help of our teacher, and it became a very popular and well-loved source of information for milliners. It was obvious by now that I was getting on towards 70 and thinking something about retirement. Not that self-employed people usually retire, they usually keep going. My mother went on as an artist, painting pictures until she was 95 when she finally died, as did my father, both 95, both painting till the end. So I expected to go on doing things, but certainly not at the pace that this business was demanding of me. It would have been far too much. So really we wanted to pass the business in total to somebody else. So we talked to all our children and none of them wanted it. The ideal one would have been Owen, number 5, because he is a superb craftsman. He makes early musical instruments. If you go online, you'll see him at Morse-Brown.com, and you can see viols, baritons, all sorts, beautifully made with intricate carving and inlay work. And we thought he would be ideal because he's got the skills. But no, they were not. They wanted to stay with the instruments. So we were stuck. What do we do? How can I stop? And nothing much happened for perhaps 6 months or so. And then we got a phone call from Owen to say that he and Catherine, his wife, had decided that after all, they would like to take on the business because it would be an added thing to go with the musical instruments. So everything was shipped down to where he lived in Melksham, down towards Swindon, and he set up a unit there and started making the hat blocks. The big advantage of that other thing was the fact that Catherine, his wife, was an expert in business marketing. So she was able to bring her skills to bear on the business. And together they have now built that business up to be one of the biggest and most well-known hat block businesses in the world. It's just, wherever you go, oh, Guy Morse-Brown hats. And there was one chap who I met actually on a holiday in California. And he said, "Are you Guy Morse-Brown?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man," he said, "there's no place to go for hat blocks. There's Guy Morse-Brown in the UK." So it was nice.
The first one that comes up on a Google search.
Sorry?
You're the first that comes up on a Google
Yeah,
search.
yeah, we're there. Well, I'd like to show you, well, before I do that, I just mentioned that in fact one of the things that I was concerned about is I didn't have a pension. So a husband and wife team who had been our mentors as we built up the business, they decided that they would talk to Owen and arrange for a small commission to be paid to me on sales to give me a pension, which they did. We went together and had a big meeting all together. And Dave said to me, "Now listen, when I'm talking to Owen, keep quiet. If you say anything, I'll kick you under the table. Leave it to me." Because he knew what I'd do. I'd just give it to Owen. But he didn't want that. He wanted it to be done properly. So he arranged for a suitable commission to be paid to me, which was wonderful. I'd like to show you now a short video of Owen at work. Now this is, it's the hands-on side of the manual side of hat block making. In actual fact, we don't show publicly the machines that he's got, the automatic machines, because there are now competitors in hat block making, and we don't particularly want people to see our particular machines. See if we can get it to come up.
You look back at a lot of the old antique blocks, back to the early 20th century, there's some incredible shapes, both from a carving point of view, the block maker being able to make them, but also from the milliner's point of view, being able to make a hat on it. The wood we get comes in sawn boards, which is just the tree trunk sawn up into planks. Most blocks are made up of blued pieces. It's then sawn up into approximately the right width pieces and planed. I've always loved working with wood since I was a little kid. My dad worked with wood, and I've always found a lot of pleasure in making things out of wood. It's just an amazing material. It's so nice to be part of that process where you're making a block to a shape, to a design, but then the milliner takes it to a whole other level. Not just with making the hat to the shape of the block, but then what they do with it afterwards, how it's worn, how it's trimmed, how it's, what the colours are, everything like that. So it's the whole process through. We're both part of it, the block maker. 100 years ago, there were many more block makers than there are today, because many more people wore hats than they do now, particularly men's hats. Everybody wore top hats, bowler hats, jollies, feathers, whatever. think I've always been fascinated with tools, just an object that can perform a function and how it performs its function. I get really focused on what I'm doing, but it's not like I'm thinking about other things, but you're really focused on the way the wood needs to be cut and where you've got to change direction with your tool. You're pretty focused on what you're doing. I love all the hand carved parts. There's some parts that are obviously done on machines, roughing out, sawing and planing and that sort of thing. But the fine detail, getting into the shape, the finished shape, I really enjoy that. Proportion and how the shapes work together and how the curves come out of one curve going one way into another curve going the other, and designing the line and the shape, and then transferring that from a piece of paper into the block. That's very satisfying. Seeing things just in a two-dimensional way first, and then seeing how that transfers into a three-dimensional shape. Because really, a block is often just a starting point. So it will give you the shape, but there's so much more you could do with it afterwards. It really takes careful design. But sometimes you've got to think about the process for quite a while. I might have a hat from a customer, but it might be a few days before I've come up with the method to produce it. The handwork is really crucial to get the final shape. And it's really about just feeling the shape as you go. And making adjustments, using the light. Light is very important. Being able to see the profile of it and light and shadow is very useful, particularly if you're trying to make a smooth surface. The way the light will shine across the block can give you an indication of where the shape is not quite right, where you need to take some off. If you've got a hill and behind the hill is going to be a shadow. Probably the biggest satisfaction in it is the finished product, whatever I make. Whether it's a simple block or it's very complicated, it's just seeing the process all the way through and having the finished object that's sanded smooth and varnished, and you see the final shape. There's a big satisfaction to me in the final product. It's almost like that's what I work for, is to see the end result.
So there you have it. I would add that it was very much speeded up. Owen is a fast worker, but not that fast. And you may have wondered what that strange saw was. Well, he rather likes Japanese tools. So that's what the funny shaped saw was. They used to cut the slices out of the side of the block. And those beautiful little planes and spoke shapes were originally for musical instrument makers, but obviously he's using them to make hat blocks. They're lovely little craftsman-built pieces of equipment. So that was good. Now, as I mentioned to you, Owen had my oval turning machine, my Guy's hat block engine, and used that extensively for a number of years, but I promised that I would make him a new one. So I did build him another one. It took me a long time because I was just doing it amongst other things. And I have a picture, if I can find it. There it is. Now that's a semi-automatic hat block making machine. Here we go again. That's it. That is a router, and that oval shape there is the faceplate on which you put a hat block shape, roughly shaped on the bandsaw, and then as it rotates, it rocks back and forth to generate the oval. And the router then follows it round a template. You can see the template at the bottom. That template is there, determines the shape of the block. So I say semi-automatic. There's still hand work in as much as you have to steer the router, but you haven't got to do anything to the block itself. So that was a good step forward. Now that's the kind of block that machine will make. So you can get some idea of the complexity of the movement that's needed to produce those shapes. Owen now has a computer-controlled machine which is entirely automatic. We found a small company that makes bespoke machines and commissioned them to make him a machine that would actually make hat blocks from scratch. He obviously has to produce the oval-shaped wooden block, put it on the machine, and then he will have previously read an existing block and put the details on a stick, on a memory stick, so that when he wants to make a new block, he puts the block on the thing, puts the memory stick in of the shape he wants, presses the button, bingo, an hour later he's got a hat block. So that was very successful. The reason we chose that, I say we, because I was involved with him in making the decision to buy it. He was discussing whether or not to pay for another craftsman to work alongside him, which would have cost him £20,000–30,000 a year. And I said, well, which do we do? Spend £30,000 on a machine, which is what it cost, or do we, and that would be just one payment, or do you have a person to work with all the attendant problems of employment, and it's £30,000 every year? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? So we had this machine built, and he's been delighted with it. So I was able to retire. I didn't take all my hats off, but that's another story. We decided we would have a, wait a minute, get this right. We decided that we would have a final celebration as a family in a property which we'd taken for the weekend down in Devon. And we were going to have a celebration meal on the last day. And at the meal, Anne stood up and said, we've got something to tell you. Grace, bless her, said, you're going to have another baby. No! One of you is enough, thank you very much. No, I'm not going to have another baby. Anyway, and Anne then said, well, Dad's had a letter from St James Palace in London to say that the Queen has given him an MBE for services to millinery and skills training, and he will be going down to meet the Queen. This time Grace said, well done, Sir Dad. So that was lovely. So I did in fact go down to London, and it was the most memorable experience. He was the most incredible person to be involved, talk to and be there. It was wonderful. The sort of memory that lives with you for the rest of your life. And so I finally took off the last of my hats, last but one. That'll be the next one. When we started, in fact, a government survey had found that the millinery industry in the United Kingdom was in terminal decline. Now, however, there were blocks available, there were books on how to make hats available, there was a magazine available, and there were many, many courses, because Owen and Catherine, through their website, had listed literally hundreds of courses over the years that you could go worldwide. So it has spread to be an international enterprise. So it's not just my hats that have changed over the years, but hats and hat making all over the world. Thank you. Oh, I didn't show you that one. There you are. Thank you very much. I didn't, did I?
What's in the box?
Yeah, I can do. All right. Did you want some more?
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Okay, I'll tell you about the box first, and then I'll tell you about the other one. I missed one out, didn't I, with the playing around with the machine.
Lights on or off?
Off, please. Yeah.
I'll start with this picture again.
Okay. Right. People used to come to the workshop when I was making things for people, and one day an elderly gentleman came to the workshop, and he said he was carrying this wooden thing, and he said, "Can you all make me a swingle tree?" And I said, "I should think so. What's a swingle tree?" "Like this," he said. Held it up for me to see. Oh, right, okay. Anyway, I made it for him, and I took it along to his house when it was made, and he looked at it, and he said, "Hey, off, Boston!" And this is the result. This is what it was. I made two actually, because I rather liked the thing, and I thought it'd be nice to stick up on the office wall. That is a swingle tree. Does anybody know what a swingle tree is?
Is it to do with waves?
No? What is a swingle tree? Well, it's all mechanised now, but when it used to be that you needed two horses and to pull a plough, you had to link the horses to the plough. So you'd have a chain from each horse from the bridle, and that hooked onto there, and a chain from the other horse onto there, and then you connected the plough to the middle, or whatever implement the farmer was using. That's a swingle tree.
Ah,
Wow.
I'll leave that out if anybody wants to come have a look at it.
what material is that made of?
Ash.
Ash. I thought it might be ash.
Ash for strength.
You'll miss those trees, won't you?
Huh?
You'll miss those trees, won't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Did we get the...
It's on the
Yeah.
previous pictures.
it's not that one.
Yeah, and then you go to the next one.
I'll go to the next one, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, just a quick one then. I'll try not to keep you too long. But I was asked by a gentleman in the village, in fact, to have a look at a boat he'd bought because he wanted to know if I could do the fitting out, put a deck on it, put a cabin on, put an engine in and do all the work. And he took me up to see it. You never believe it, it was made of concrete. Oh, here we go. And I'm a woodworker, not a concrete man. Anyway, it was 3/4 inch thick, reinforced concrete. And what they do, they build a steel sort of skeleton, cover it inside and out with chicken wire, lace it all together, and then 2 plasterers work, one inside the boat and one outside, and with a particular design of mortar, they will plaster it together, working around the boat, and finish up with a lovely skin thickness of 3/4 inch. But obviously you've got problems with how you're going to fix woodwork to concrete. So it's a matter of roll plugs, a matter of resin bonded, fiberglass resin, and that sort of thing, and whatever else we could think of at the time. Anyway, I spent, when I looked at it, the chap said to me, could you, this was November, he said, could you finish it by next Easter? And I said, as they say in the Midlands, you joking, are you? I didn't say that actually, but that's what I felt like saying. And anyway, I said, well, I doubt it, but we can have a go. So I worked in part-time, mainly in the summer, because it was outside. And I worked on that job for 6 years on and off, and finally finished it. Now let's see if we can call up the result. There it is. That's the boat that we built. And you get some idea of the size of it. It was 40 foot long, and we had to lay a deck, which I'll show you on the next slide, and put the combing all around the edge. I had to make a mould onto which I could laminate strips of timber to make the cabin, and then I made patterns for castings for the aluminium window frames. And a lot of the detail work, the things at the top, the handrails and the bowsprit, the client made himself. He was a quite competent woodworker, and he enjoyed doing that. And then we had to fit a reconditioned lorry engine inside. We actually built a brick wall inside as a partition. That's what you do with concrete boats. Now, as you can see, it's the other side of a garage. And this side, where I'm standing, was the drive to the house, tarmac drive. So, first of all, I'll show you the deck, because I pity to miss that one. That's the deck. That's made of teak. And you can see how we put the planks were scarfed into the main beam in the middle, and then all the joints were caulked with a special caulk to make it watertight. So the next thing that had to happen was that it had to be taken down to the seaside. Now this thing was probably weigh about 4 tons, so he had a low loader come down the drive with a crane in front. The crane put its spreader feet out to steady it, and put its boom over the garage. They put straps around the boat and began to lift it. And it went up and it swung round until as it was going round, it was passing over the roof of the house. Unfortunately, the legs of the crane began to sink into the tarmac, and it went down faster than the crane operator could make it go up. So my client was there pushing this boat up as if that would make any difference, because it was going to crush his house. And it came down, and the bow just nudged into the tiles and crushed a few and then stopped. And the crane driver managed to then hoist it back up and swing it around and put it on and take it away. It was taken away. You can guess what my next job was: roof repairs. So there you are, that's the story we missed. Sorry about that.
Wow.
That's your mind, yeah.
Okay.
I helped Guy prepared this, so I knew what slides were there.
Thank you, Guy.
That's
Do you
okay.
know what? I was just thinking, I'm going to wake up in the wee small hours in the morning and think, did he really say that boat was built of concrete?
Yeah. Sorry.
That is just amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Never heard of that
No.
before. So was this guy's boat? Did he have the boat and it was in repair?
No, he bought the shell, the concrete shell,
Yeah.
ready to fit out by me. That was it.
And a brick wall.
I built a brick wall, yeah, between the engine compartment and the cabins. Fireproof.
Am I dreaming this?
A lot of people have said that.
Why did you want a concrete boat?
I wondered that myself, to be honest. I mean, why didn't he go for a wooden one or a fiberglass one?
It wouldn't be very pliable, would it?
Sorry?
I don't know, he could have took up both, his wife would have been a lot happier.
I just wonder what the history of concrete boats is. Where
Well, they were made in the war, actually.
Right, okay.
They
So
were,
that's where it comes
landing
from.
crafts and things like that were made of concrete.
right.
So it stemmed from that.
Okay.
But I think it's died out now and they don't make them anymore.
Wow. I wonder why when they put them over houses.
Yeah.
I'll try and convince your wife of that one.
Yeah.
Was
Excellent.
he insured?
Sorry?
His insurance cover it?
Was he insured?
Yeah, for his roof.
I've no idea.
I'm not sure it'd cover
It didn't cost him much. It was only a 10-minute job to put the towers back. In fact, I don't think I charged him.
Thank you, Guy. Has anybody got any questions for Guy?
I have a question. Have your hat blocks been used to make the Queen's hats?
Yes.
And have they been used to make Nora Batty's hats?
Who?
Nora Batty, the Master of Summer
He
Wine.
went back
Oh, I don't know. They've been used for. Oh, wait a minute. Who's the chap who the lost Raiders of the Ark or something? What's his name?
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, Harrison Ford. We made a series of blocks for Harrison Ford.
Ah,
So, because hat blocks are used not only by milliners, domestic milliners, but by companies, by film companies, opera companies, you name it. Wherever hats are needed, you need hat blocks.
but you
So,
probably did make one for Nora Batty.
okay. In fact, what happened with the Queen's hat was that I heard from Owen, because he heard about it, was that the Queen's milliner said to, no, the Queen told her milliner that you'll never guess who I've just given an MBE to, your hat block maker.
Has anybody get any other questions for Guy?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I never had a block for a Busby. Whether they use blocks, I don't know. Probably not. But we had some weird ones. There's a hat called a Glengarry. You may know that one. It's a sort of like a thing for the Scottish people, and it was an extremely precise specification. It had to be just right fabric, right stitching, everything. And the blocks were just nightmares to make. But we did a couple, but not many, and didn't want any more of those. But, yeah.
And, sorry.
Is a hat block for making hats or storing hats or both?
Making, not storing.
Not storing.
No.
I thought it was. Yeah. Okay.
No. You might have I showed you the dolly head. You might, if you wanted to spend money on the dolly head, you could keep it on that. But normally you keep them in a hat box. Keep the dust off them. That's all.
Okay. I thought it might progress on so you had to shape perfectly in storage or something, but no.
No need.
And would a milliner have their own set of hat blocks that kind of go through their career with them? Is it the sort of thing that gets...
Yes and no. Because they're expensive. I mean, the average price of a crown block is just around about £100. A brim block is 150, 200, 250, and you can spend even a lot more, double that if you want a real special. But customers would ask for a special. They'd send a photograph, they'd send a hat or a drawing, and discuss with Owen what they wanted, and he'd make it, and then that would be their exclusive property, and nobody else could use that block, and we couldn't make any more the same. But they last a lifetime with care. But you do stick pins in them to hold the fabric on, the little special millinery pins which you push in. That's one of the reasons for using a wood like lime, which is soft. You can push a pin into lime quite easily. And but they will last if they're taken care of. We had some ancient blocks, probably 100 years old. They looked like they've got woodworm all over them, all the holes from the pins.
Was I in the one that was in the garage where they told you it was on fire?
Yeah. No, sorry, no, that was a different one. That one, that one is amazing because he's severely dyslexic, did very badly at school. He got 1 O level in art, became a waiter, and then got married, bought a house, repaired it, built it, altered it, sold it, bought another one, sold it, bought another one. Guess what? He's now worth over $1 million. That's what happens if you've got dyslexia.
Anybody got any questions for Don?
Yes. So, any idea how many of your hat blocks are out in the wild?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, all over the world.
It must be such a shock.
Yeah. Well, when you think that he's making about what 200 or 300 a week and shipping them out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of blocks going out.
There's real demand in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
People often used to say, well, where are all the hats? Well, good question. Where are all the hats? Because there are plenty of blocks, hats being made. But you go to something like Ascot, which is a wonderful display of incredible hats, and that's something that Owen and Catherine, take a particular interest in, and go there and photograph and talk to people and, spread the word.
And there they all are.
Yeah, there they are.
So out of everything that you've done, what's given you the most satisfaction? Are you able to say that's the thing that
Aids for the disabled.
was that was
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Fairly stress-free and delightful customers.
Yeah.
I mean, but running a business the size that Owen's built it now is pretty stressful.
Yeah.
Very hard work, long hours, working with wood, dust, smell. It's okay. I enjoyed it. I often think back now, how on earth did I do it?
Yeah.
You do it when you're younger and just get on with it.
But the disabled aids, I guess, you're changing people's lives, aren't you?
That's right.
Completely.
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent.
It's lovely.
Anybody for any more?
So was your chair the pre-runner to the recliner? You used to see in shops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
Your chair that you invented
Yeah.
for the disabled.
Yeah.
You get reclining chairs, don't you?
Yeah, that's taken.
So was it a forerunner to that?
Mine was a forerunner to those, yes. Mine is out of date now because these modern recliners
Yeah.
have taken place.
I'm amazed because Joseph was a carpenter.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
One of the other aids that you made was a tilting bed, where a man couldn't get up out of bed.
That's right,
He was
yeah.
sat out of bed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they are commercially
Yeah.
available, aren't they? With
Yeah.
beds that
Yeah.
tilt but electronically.
That's right. Well, this is tilted with a spring.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was the same basic invention. The spring-powered mechanism went into beds, toilet seats, chairs, whatever.
Wow. Wow.
In fact, it was interesting. I don't know if you remember a lady called Betty Jones who lived on Bratch Park. I built a chair for her. It was a special lifting chair because both her legs were like pieces of wood. It didn't bend at all. So the whole body had to be rocked like that. And I made a chair for her and a toilet aid so that she could go to the loo by herself. And she was enabled to stay at home without going into a home for 20 years, being severely disabled. The sad thing was that towards the end of her life, she began to realise that she couldn't manage any longer at home, and she went to a care home. Well, I got a phone call from the care home proprietor to ask me to take the chair away because they'd taken her chair there. And I said, why take it away? Because hasn't got a CE mark on it, it's not been approved. And it hasn't been fireproof. Well, it had been actually, because it was fireproof material. So we can't have it in the building, I'm very sorry. And I said, well, if you take that chair away and you have to manhandle her in her condition, I doubt if she'll last 6 months. Well, I'm very sorry, but that's it, take it away. She died within 3 months. So that's modern stuff intervening in what can be, a really helpful thing. In fact, it was that finally stopped me making hat blocks, because the EU regulations meant that everything I made had to be tested and certified to comply with the machinery directive and various other directives from the EU, and I couldn't afford to do it. It cost thousands to do that. So you make an aid worth about 150 quid, 10,000 quid to have it tested. Forget it. So.
Anybody got any other questions for God? Yes, go on, John.
Could you tell me what sort of people wear hats? Because if I were to go around the village any day, the chance of meeting anybody with a hat are very rare.
It's so right, that's right.
In fact, when I got married and I had a going outfit with a hat, my husband said, well, you can take that off for a start. He threw it away.
Well, there you are.
What a hat suit.
Yeah. Well,
It's events, isn't it?
you don't see them out and about,
No.
as you say, but you'll see them at weddings, and you'll see them at funerals occasionally, and obviously wherever there's some special gathering, obviously as I mentioned earlier, Ascot and horse racing places where there's a huge amount of beautiful hats. So
And
they're-
don't they look smart?
Sorry?
Don't they look smart?
Don't they just? Yes,
Yeah,
they do.
absolutely.
Yes.
There used to be a lady in the village. They used to wear a wonderful hat.
Really?
Yep. And only once a year did you see it. You know, it would be
No.
Joan.
Oh, yeah.
Joan, she's no longer with us, unfortunately. But she was the chairman of the parish council for many years. And when we had the carnival,
Joe Williams.
Joan Williams,
Yeah.
when we had the carnival, she and Reggie used to come round in the car, they were sort of part of the parade, and I have to say Joan wore magnificent hats, didn't she? She really did.
Yeah.
Now whether she had to be boxed up for those hats, I don't know, but certainly she did. So some ladies and gents still wear hats.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
In churches years ago, the ladies always used to wear hats.
That's right.
I've got because my mum wouldn't go into church without a
Yeah,
hat on.
yeah,
And in some churches today, all the ladies still wear
Yeah.
hats.
yeah.
So there's still a lot of business called for hats.
That's right.
As you can prove.
Yes.
Right, I'm going to draw it to a close there. So, Guy, thank you. It's been absolutely amazing. I mean, we knew it was going to be an interesting talk, but what a journey you've taken us on. So, I'm sure there's more. So it'd be great to hear from you again, because I could just listen to that all night. What a wonderful storyteller, and what a wonderful story. So, everybody, please put your hands together. And of course, we're back 22nd of June, did I say? Thursday, 22nd of June, we'll be back. And if you give us a hand with the chairs, that would be super.